Whatever.
It is 6:01, and the City Council is in session. And Mrs. Clarkson is going to lead us in the invocation and the pledge. If you'll stand, please.
Dear God, as we gather tonight, please let us be thankful that we have the opportunity to be here and work within a system that allows citizens to have voices that make a difference and shape our community. And please give us here on council the wisdom to make the decisions that we find best for the city. Lord, as I think of, on a personal level, my son tomorrow having a minor routine procedure, it reminds me to ask for you to look over everyone that's either having surgery, is in poor health, or just needs to feel your loving arms as they go through whatever they may be battling in their lives. So please watch over us all and bless us and continue to let us serve our community in a way that makes a difference for now and in the future. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let me remind you that if you are going to speak to an issue tonight, you need to sign the form and get that to the city secretary up here. And also, when you come to speak, make sure that you give your address and as well that you address the council. Okay. We have announcements of community interest. Mr. Cunhas.
Thank you very much. Welcome to everybody tonight. Thank you, Council. Just going to be brief. We've got 3 announcements tonight. I know we've got a long meeting, but we've got a very important event coming up this weekend, the Kerrville Triathlon. This is the 9th annual Kerrville Triathlon Festival. It's going to be held Saturday and Sunday. This event brings a lot of visitors to Kerrville, which is good for our local businesses and hotels. And so we are very, very happy to host this, like I said, for the 9th year. Now, it's important to note that there will be some road closures Saturday and Sunday. The ones on Saturday should be over by noon. Sunday goes a little bit later. We have a full listing of all those on both our Facebook and website pages. So you might want to check that out if you're planning on traveling around town this weekend.
How many are estimated to be here this weekend?
I don't know the number, but I know it's the largest number they've ever had. So it's going to be big.
All right.
All right, our next event, we have Movies in the Park. Now, we've talked about this before. Last year for Halloween, we did a poll, and we did one movie down at Louise Hayes Park. This year, we did a similar poll, and the response was so overwhelming that we decided to expand it to 4 different weeks. So, beginning October 5th with The Nightmare Before Christmas, that's a Saturday. We're going to have, like I said, 4 weeks in a row of movies, Scooby-Doo, Hocus Pocus, Monsters, Inc., I don't know, something about Saturday, October 19th, Hocus Pocus was like 3-1 ahead of everybody else. So had we had a poll and just picked one movie, it would have won. But we're inviting everybody to come out for that. Begins at 7 p.m. or dark, and it's free. So hope to see you at one of them. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And finally, one event that we want to tell you about that's coming up is bulk waste collection. We do this twice a year. If you want to get rid of some big ticket items at your house that are too big to fit into the garbage can, and I have quite a few of those. That will begin October 7th, garbage collection day. If you have a collection day on Monday, you need to have your items out by 7:30 on Monday, October 7th. Same thing if you have a Tuesday collection day, Monday, October 14th, and then Wednesday and Thursday collection days, you need to have the items out by Monday, October 21st. Again, this offers a chance to get stuff cleared out from your house. And if you have any information about that, you can check out our Facebook or website pages. And I encourage everybody to take advantage of this. This is a great service that we do twice a year. That's it. Thank you.
Council, any items of community interest? Okay. Now, let's move on. And to our Visitors Citizens Forum. This is an opportunity for citizens to speak to us. if you're signed up, you can speak on issues later, but you do need to fill out a speaker request form, and you have 4 minutes. So,
We have 2 citizens signed up. George Baruti.
okay. Now, Mr. Broody, you use your actual residence.
I do. I'm George Broody, 1616 Glen Road, Kerrville.
But, Mr.
Whoa, whoa,
Rudy,
whoa, whoa,
excuse
whoa.
me.
What was the addition behind your street address?
What?
What did you say behind your street address?
You heard me. I got it recorded, right?
What
Kerrville.
city did you state?
Okay, you've done that before. I want to ask you not to do that. Just give us your street address.
Okay, I'm 1616 Glen Road. This is more of an announcement than anything else. I'm wearing the shirt. The mayor was at the event. But anyways, this is about the Kerrville North community. Since council last met, they've actually had a pretty busy couple of weeks of events over there. There was a marriage, I guess Ms. Eichner was at Mount Olive on Saturday a couple of weeks ago. And then they had the church service, the combined church service that in Carver Park with the neighborhood picnic that the mayor preached at. And then last Tuesday, they had the Glory Community Garden Appreciation Luncheon. And then last Friday, they had the Barnett Chapel fish fry fundraiser. And then Sunday was, again, the Mount Olive Baptist Church 117th year anniversary. And then Sunday evening was Community Gardens Music in the Garden. And I had never heard him sing, but Coach Pfeiffer was singing. And if you haven't heard him sing, you need to find a way to seek that out because it's pretty impressive. And then, unfortunately, this weekend there's going to be a funeral for Mr. Joe Lewis. I say all that to say that once again, this neighborhood, Kerrville North, is pretty much the only neighborhood that we have in Kerrville that is already living the Kerrville 2050 plan. They have events in their parks there. It's a true community. They actually know each other. I've said this before. I've lived in the same house for, 17 years now. I know the neighbor across the street, and I know the other one over there. I know some people by name, but I don't know anything about them. In this neighborhood, everybody seems to know everybody, and they know what's going on. And as I say all that to say that as you go into this development plan that you're looking at for this neighborhood, if you would just consider being careful not to disrupt what's good about it as you try and enhance what's good about it. Just give them kind of what they're asking for, if they're asking for anything, and not try and apply best practices that maybe don't fit. Try and apply what they're actually asking for. That's pretty much it. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Bruce Strakey.
Good, Bruce.
Bruce Strakey, 615 Earl Garrett. I'm going to take a step back and be a little personal this evening and tell a little story about how I ended up in Kerrville. My wife came to me one day when we were thinking about new places to live, and she said, we should move to Kerrville. I'm a river guide and an old backpacker, and I don't know a thing about animal husbandry. And I did marry my wife in cowboy boots, but trust me, they were what she asked me to wear. And so we came to Kerrville because I trusted her, because she had trusted me so many times before. And it has been the most wonderful move for my family. This is the place to live. And councils before you, as you are doing today, are trying to make this be an even better place to live. And one of the great things that's happening is this mayor's task force on housing that many of us are involved in, and that is really looking at the housing. And it's not just looking at workforce housing. It's not just working at low-income housing. And it's not just looking at typical housing. It's looking at housing that is attainable for our citizens. And we have, right now, an unemployment rate that we are very proud of. Everybody who lives in this town who actually wants a job probably has one. It may not be the job that they want. They may not be in the right seat on the bus yet, but they have a job. And what this city is now focused on is bringing more housing here. We have a multifamily project that's going out on Thompson Drive that the city has supported. The county, not so much. We have other projects that are longer term, 75 acres of low density housing that is looking to come to Kerrville, creating ways to do that, and people are working on that. A small project, 8.5 acres, that'll bring typical housing to Kerrville. There are folks talking about doing multifamily on a 15-acre parcel. There are people who are looking at this all over town at all the different price points. And that is because Kerrville is a great place to live. And we have room for more people if we do it sustainably, which we have for years, and which you are already doing with the 2050 plan. How do we grow our city sensibly? You're doing it. People are noticing. People are trying to make it happen. And that is the charge you all have and you've picked up. And the reason that that is so important, the reason that that reminds me why my family moved to this area 12 years ago, when I don't understand Texas, and I admit it, I'm from Utah, I grew up in Utah, I love it though. Doesn't mean I understand it. This is a place where every family can succeed. Every family has good things and good opportunities for their kids in our schools, public and private, in our events, and the things that we go to do. And I cannot tell you how proud I am and how much I love this community. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Bruce. I should clap.
Before we move on to the next item, I want to add something to what Mr. Baruti said. This last weekend, we lost a fellow named Joe Lewis, and I'm just going to say a little bit about him. Joe came here as a 7-year-old kid from Refugio because he had TB. And out where the state hospital is now, there was a sanatorium for what they termed Negroes with TB. So he came, 7 years old. He got healthy, went to the Doyle School, played in every sport, and then played on a baseball team that won all kind of recognition. He is in the National Black League Hall of Fame, baseball. He worked at the Blue Bonnet Hotel and 32 years at the VA. But great guy. He and his wife Sylvia raised 4 daughters, all of whom graduated from college. And they got a bunch of grandchildren and children. Why am I saying that? Just another person who's passed away and made a difference in this community. So, okay. We have a proclamation about Recovery Month. And do we have anybody here representing the Recovery Coalition community? Right up here. And I'll tell you, I'm going to read the proclamation, but would you tell, you're on the Recovery Coalition community, but you're in a role here in the city as well. So just tell us name and where you serve.
Kendall Young, Tybee High School, and I'm the secretary of the Recovery Coalition.
And you're a counselor at the high school?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Dale Trees, and I work full-time at La Hacienda Treatment Center. I'm chairman of the Kerrville Recovery Community Coalition, and I'm back in college my first semester to become a counselor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Leanne?
And I'm Leanne Fitzpatrick. I'm the superintendent of Kerrville State Hospital, and I'm a member.
All right. Let me ask you, are y'all going to have an increase in staff at the state hospital?
Yes, sir.
About how many?
Approximately no less than 250. I'm hoping for closer to 285.
Did you hear that? Wow. As I did this week, I've already told 2 people, go out there and apply for a job.
Yes, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Danny?
Danny Smith, Fire Chief, city liaison to this group, and they adopted me and did everything else with me to make it part of it.
He lets them use their fire truck sometimes.
Okay. All right, I'm going to read this proclamation and give it to you. And then if one of you will say a few brief remarks, and you may have already determined who that is. I say brief because we got a long agenda today. Whereas the impact of mental and substance use disorders is apparent in our local community, and through Recovery Month, we work to promote and support evidence-based treatment and recovery practices, the emergence of a strong and proud recovery community, and the dedication of service providers and citizens across our community and the nation who make recovery in all its forms possible. And whereas prevention of mental and substance abuse disorders works, treatment is effective, and people can and do recover in our area and around the nation. And whereas preventing and overcoming mental and substance use disorders is essential to achieving healthy lifestyles, both physically and emotionally. And whereas we must encourage relatives and friends of people with mental and substance use disorders to implement preventive measures, recognize the signs of a problem, and guide those in need to appropriate treatment and recovery support services. And whereas the 2019 Recovery Month emphasizes the need to share resources and build networks across our community and to support recovery, it reminds us that mental and substance abuse disorders affect us all and that we are all part of the solution. Your efforts can help reduce the stigma around the impact of mental and substance use disorders and support individuals living in recovery. And whereas to help more people achieve and sustain long-term recovery, Kerrville Recovery Community Coalition and Communities Project of Kerrville, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration invite all residents of Kerrville, Texas, to participate in National Recovery Month. Now, therefore, I, Bill Blackburn, Mayor of the City of Kerrville, do hereby proclaim the month of September as Recovery Month in Kerrville and call upon the people of Kerrville to observe this month with appropriate programs, activities, and ceremonies to support this year's Recovery Month theme. Join the voices for recovery. Together, we are stronger. So, Mr. Kunyas, you want to get a picture, and I'm going to just put this right here, okay? And I'm going to sign it, I know. All right, who's going to say a brief word? You want to? Okay.
So on the Recovery Coalition, we have members that come together, and if I pulled everybody in here, I would say that at least half or more, somebody has a family member or themselves or somebody that they know has been affected by drugs and alcohol abuse. And so we're just taking a positive approach to try to figure out how to bring together our community, break down stigmas, and our community is very good at that and provide prevention and educational opportunities. And I see Mr. Morgan over there, and so I have to say thank you to the Elks Lodge. He brought drug testing kits yesterday to our high school to provide information. We have a speaker coming at the end of the week, and we're just doing different events to bring together because there's lots of people in our community that have bead addiction or have somebody in their family that has bead addiction, work on it daily, and we need to highlight the positive aspects of that. And so that's what we do on our coalition.
We thank all of you for your support.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'll sign the proclamation there.
We thank you, and you guys do a great job. Thank you, Leanne. Your name wrong earlier. It's Leanne. Okay, now I called you Paul. Kendall, good to have you in our group. Have you read that?
All right. We now come to our consent agenda. And the idea of the consent agenda, particularly when we have long agendas in these meetings, is that the city council approve the following items, which will grant the mayor or city manager the authority to take all actions necessary for each approval of each. And
Are you going to say it? Go ahead.
There's no citizen speaker signed up for the consent agenda. However, on item 4C, Resolution 39-2019, a resolution approving the budget for Kerr Emergency 911 Network for fiscal year is 2020. It's not 2019.
instead of 2019, it's
Yes, sir.
2020.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
All right. Okay. Council, what's your pleasure?
I'm ready to move to accept the consent agenda items A through G as presented.
Okay.
Second.
All right. We got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor, raise the right hand. Okay. Thank you. Now we have, that's the end of the consent agenda. We come now to the sign code ordinance, and Ms. McLennan, if you'll read that in for us.
Oh, sorry. Hold on. Ordinance number 2019-23, second reading. An ordinance approving and adopting the City of Kerrville, Texas sign code, a comprehensive rewrite of the city's sign regulations in accordance and align with the Kerrville Comprehensive Plan, Kerrville 2050. Said rewrite to be known as the City of Kerrville, Texas sign code and found within a new Chapter 92 of the city's Code of Ordinances, which will repeal and replace Article 2 of Chapter 6 of the city's Code of Ordinances, adopting revised regulations concerning the installation and maintenance of signs within the City of Kerrville, Texas, and within the extraterritorial jurisdiction of the city, containing a cumulative clause, containing a savings and severability clause, providing for penalties not to exceed $2,000, ordering publication, providing an effective date, and providing other matters related to the subject. And there are 10 citizen speakers signed up.
All right. Okay, Mr. Paxton, if you'll present this.
Just a quick overview of the revisions of the sign ordinance since the last city council reading. Again, process to date, gone through the code review committee, multiple hearings, public open house, the planning and zoning commission, and again, September 10th with city council. The amendments since the September 10th council meeting corrected the two typographical errors on page 41, referencing a 6'8" height clearance above the sidewalk. Page 31 corrected the reference to the other section of the code based on the electronic display signs. Electronic displays clarified the brightness at a 0.3 foot candles above natural ambient light as recommended by the International Sign Association. Amended the minimum display time to 8 seconds based on the council decision at the last meeting. It does allow for the 1 second fade transition between messages. Removed the requirement for any type of frame around the electronic display as we discussed. Canopy signs are not limited to one per entrance or establishment. Wall signs may be internally lit for any type of wall sign not specific to individual letters or cutout words. So some of your standard cabinet signs, just a rectangular box signs, are still allowed to be internally illuminated. Freestanding signs are allowed to be constructed on one pole, on 2 poles, or on twin masonry supports. There's a little confusion in that language previously, but it does allow those 3 options. Freestanding signs, electronic displays, and feathered flags are prohibited in the downtown core only. The balance of the downtown arts and culture district does not include that prohibition. This is consistent with the current city code. Sidewalk signs allowed in the downtown arts and culture district and the downtown core clarified that the sign shall be in front of the business. We did remove the 5-foot separation from the building, but it still has to be within the bounds of that business on the sidewalk and keep a 4-foot clear pathway. There's those two maps again, just so we can see those for comparison. Some of the other changes that we do have, school district signs are not prohibited from displaying commercial messages. Sorry, I was just answering some questions that we've had from several citizens. The electronic default mechanism has been removed as per the Planning and Zoning's recommendation. That was discussed at the Planning and Zoning Commission that that's not a functional piece of the sign, that if there's a default in the sign, we would have to contact the sign owner to have that malfunction corrected. That's the way the code reads now. And with that, I'd be pleased to answer any questions before or after public input.
All right, before we go to speakers, any questions from the council or?
I have a couple. In speaking to Corey and his wife, there were just a couple of things additionally that I wanted to ask about. And one of them is item 2, canopy signs. Let's see, F. And it was G and that was stricken, now it's F. The question is this the same as what's in the current ordinance now? And does this change something that may have additional consequences that we're not aware of?
It's similar. So the current sign code says where an establishment chooses any one of the following: an awning sign, canopy roof sign, or projecting sign. Any combination of those signs, the total combined area of any one or multiple signs shall not exceed the area allowed for the freestanding sign. Current draft you have in front of you does separate those. If it's an attached canopy or a detached canopy, is allocated to the wall signs if it's attached, or to the freestanding sign if it's detached. So there's a slight change in that to show for the freestanding canopy is more akin to the freestanding sign, whereas an attached canopy is more akin to a wall sign.
Okay, so changing this language, does it have the ability, or not ability, are there any unintended consequences in that? I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but
generally there may be some businesses that qualified under the previous description based on the freestanding sign area. There may be some changes that would have to come up to date if they change those signs. So if there is a business that's non-conforming now, those signs can remain until the time that they update, and then the new code would apply. But as far as if this creates any non-conforming signs, I'm not positive.
okay, and let me ask a clarification on that. So if we pass this code and I asked Drew to look into this further, we can come back with an amendment if it seems to be advisable after the code is passed. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Any ordinance that you have or resolution or what have you can be superseded by subsequent action.
Okay.
Right.
Because that's something I want to look more at, and I didn't give you enough time to look at that, but I'm curious about that, and I just want to make sure on the consequences of that and how that might affect businesses going forward. Okay. I was also asked on number 5A about electronic displays, and A says it's only allowed on a sign per section 92.9 that's located within a distance of 100 feet and clearly visible from major thoroughfares. So I was just kind of asked why. Why is that in there?
The main intent behind that is to make sure that the location of the sign is actually on the street frontage where the business is located. So if you had a property that might have not quite double frontage on a street, but maybe another parcel or another right-of-way separating it. They're not putting the sign, I guess, on the back side of the property to get maybe I-10 visibility when they're really on Sidney Baker, as those two kind of come close together. I've seen other cities and other instances where there's railroad right-of-ways separating a highway from a parcel, where the sign should have been on the local level street. They put the sign at the back of the property next to the railroad to get highway exposure. And the sign is really intended for the access point, not just the identification of the property. So that 100-foot limitation keeps it close to the front of the property rather than just most visible location.
Okay, last one. On the awning signs, there was just a question about that's item. And can I ask you to indulge me for a little bit of extra time too?
Yeah,
I just had a couple of comments.
Okay.
On 92.9 awning signs 1F, or let's see, no, I'm sorry, 1C. I was just brought up that I was asked a question of why can't they be internally lit? Is there a specific reason that that's in there, or is it? I read the first code and it's the same. Is there a specific reason other than it just being the same as the first code?
I think most of it was the same as the first code. If you think of some of the older kind of bubble style canopies, as those started to light up, you start creating a lot of additional lighting coming off the building. I don't know that we currently have any that are internally illuminated. Other than just consistency with the current code, I don't think that there was any particular reason behind that. I don't know that it was specifically addressed.
Thank you. Just quick comment, if that's okay. I just want to thank everybody that's in here. It's been a really great experience for me. It's not fun to know that there's differences of opinions and that eventually you're going to have to come to a conclusion that's not going to satisfy everyone. But more exciting than that is the public participation and the city responsiveness. I really think that looking at the changes from before the first reading and the changes coming forward from this is a result of you all and other citizens that have come and said, this is not what I think is right for our city. I think that's led to a really, just a really great process. And I'm so pleased that I get to be part of that process and that we've had citizen engagement. I always say that's what we need to make the best decisions for the city. So from the Code Review Committee, P&Z staff, our consultants to this point right now, I just think this is such an example of civics and local government at work. And so if you were part of this process and you're here tonight, I just really just wanted to extend that. You know, there's at least 20 changes that have come from Code Review Committee forward at this point. And they're all to just clarify things, or they're to limit government interference, or they're to make our community look and feel the way we want it to look and feel, and to consider public safety. So I just wanted to share that I feel that this was a great process.
Okay, do we have any other comments or questions from council? Okay. All right. Ms. McLennan, the list of the speakers.
Martin Stringer.
My name is Mark Stringer. My address is 1115 Sidney Baker Street. Honorable Mayor, council members, thank you for the opportunity to speak. First, I'd like to address the dark sky aspect of the sign ordinance. I own property in Jeff Davis County that from the top of my property, I have a direct line of sight to McDonald Observatory, which is the darkest observatory in the world, approximately 5 miles away. It's been well known for at least 2 decades that the hill country of Texas has been one of the fastest and largest population growth areas in Texas and the United States. Jeff Davis County has not substantially changed from approximately 3,500 total people. That's 3,500 people in the county in that same period. Why would anyone who wants to look at the stars move here? The ordinances already has a written brightness reduction requirement at night for digital signs. Why limit commercial businesses who need adequate signage, not the small signage that's allocated because of the legibility rule that you guys have to follow with DOT standards, because of 65 or so amateur astronomers who don't have sense enough to move to a dark sky area? How do their property rights trump anyone else's? Further, it doesn't appear to me that research or scientific support on the part of the city or plausible safety reasons to require electronic signs to change from a 4-second interval to an 8-second interval exist. In the 9 years, I believe it's 2010, since the other ordinance, have any accidents been attributed to a 4-second sign change interval? Second, I propose an amendment or change to ordinance that requires permits and fees on realty signs. Why should you guys get a free ride on signs that I would be fined for as a sniper and attached sign? Realty signs are commercial off-premises signs that advertise both your businesses and products. Third, the government should not be allowed to place signs that others can't. The digital sign at Tivy Stadium clearly advertises businesses, products, and services in violation of the old code section 63618, the new code 92613. I ask that you enforce your ordinance in regard to this. I'm going to place a sign like the one out front here, 130, that's sitting on the corner here of Main and Sidney Baker in front of my business, in protest of the abusive, unfair, and unequal treatment the businesses in Kerrville, Texas are receiving by the city government, and I ask that all businesses join me in protest by doing the same. Further, I find that the requirement to frame or border signs found in section 9295 places an undue and unnecessary financial burden on businesses and property owners. Please strike this from the code. I found a few other problems with the ordinance. It appears to me that 922H gives the city manager judicial oversight authorities. 9211D provides for government taking without just compensation, and there are government interference with property rights in the issues in this code. I ask that all members of the city council and government read Spann versus City of Dallas. It is the law before you continue with your wrongful methods of governance over the citizens of this community. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Kim Arvidsson.
My name is Kim Arvidsson, 600 Meadowview Lane, and I am the Associate Professor of Physics and Astronomy at China University. And I would like to shed some light, but not light pollution, on the whole nits versus foot candles issue that was talked about at the last council meeting. Questions were asked and wasn't fully answered. Through graduate school and through my postdoctoral research fellowship, I was trained as a professional astronomer. And what we do is basically measure and analyze light for a living. And so I know something about light and how to deal with it. The brightness is a colloquial term, not a very well-defined one, and should never be used to define policy on any level. Scientists and the lighting industry use other terms to describe how bright something looks. The two relevant ones here are called illuminance and luminance. Not very helpful, as they sound very similar, but not exactly the same. So, to put it as simply as I can, illuminance is light that falls on a surface, such as the wall here or the floor or something. You measure it on a surface. That's the one that's measured in foot candles. Luminance is light leaving the sign. And so that's the one that's measured in nits. So one is about falling on the ground or on a surface, and the other one is actually leaving the sign. The reason why illuminance, and thereby foot candles, is worse is that it only cares how much light falls on the surface, and it doesn't take into account the light that doesn't fall on the surface. The light that doesn't fall on the surface goes into the sky and contributes to the light pollution problem. Luminance is therefore a better quality because it takes that into account. If we care about reducing annoying light, then we should use nits as a unit. It takes more light into account, basically. Fruit candles is a non-scientific unit, and frankly, it's obsolete and shouldn't be used at all. In addition, there are better measurement tools for measuring luminance than for measuring illuminance, which means it's easier to obtain a valid value for it. And so I think that the policy discussion and ordinance language should be as conducive as possible to the entire issue, and so let the specifications read in the unit of nits, which takes into account all the light, not just the one that falls on the surface. Besides that technical issue with units, I'd like to think that we are all actually on the same page here. City, Cape Hub, the concerned citizens, and the business community. We all probably really want to eliminate waste. Light pollution is quite literally waste. What is the point of having bright illuminated signs shining at night for customers who aren't out driving around looking for them? What's the point of having light being, as part of a light being shown up into the sky and advertising for the birds? What's the point of that? That light is wasted. The owners of the sign pay for it by dollars. The rest of us pay for it with reduced night sky quality. Thank you for listening, and by the way, you're all invited to the Star Party this Friday at Loftus Observatory across the street from East Main Shiner after dark. We should be able to still see stuff despite the current light pollution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sylvia Fritz Dobbs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. So my name is Sylvia Fritz Dobbs, and I reside at 210 LaVolt Lane in Center Point, and our business is located at 1600 Broadway in Kerrville. So, as I said, I'm Sylvia Fritz Dobbs, and my brother David Fritz and I own and operate the Mini Mart convenience stores since the passing of our father in 2013. We are here because a piece of the code we were asking for support of the revised or red line that's in front of you to pass. The piece of the code that's critical to us, and it's said now that businesses are allowed to have a lit branded logo sign if they choose, such as our Mini Mart sign there, and as it reads in the wall signs. So whether you're a large or a small entity, it is common business practice today to have a strong brand image with signage that's easily identifiable, memorable, and shares your story. So our story began with Fritz Grocery and Market in Center Point, and our parents, Junior and Ann, purchased that store in 1966 from our grandmother, Josephine. And then in 1973, he purchased our first Mini Mart, and it's actually here in Kerrville on G Street and Sidney Baker South. So today the business has grown, and we have 18 locations, and we're here in Kerrville primarily, and Fredericksburg, Bandera, Ingram, Comfort, and Center Point. And we do employ a little over 140 people. So an important part of our Mini Mart story is that we're family and we're local and that we serve the Hill Country, as our brand and our sign says. So we purposely designed our signage to be easily recognizable from one Mini Mart to the next and to share our story. So my brother David and I are third generation family business owners, and we're working hard like the generations before us to keep our business going to the next generation. And a well-lit, branded sign is vital to the survival of our business, and it is also safety at night when, even if it's on or off at night, it's still safe and it brands your business. So going forward, I plan to stay connected with all of you, and my husband, Razor, and I, and my brother Dave and his wife, Stacy, really thank you and appreciate all that you all do for our city of Kerrville. And we thank you again, and thank you for your support.
For speaking. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a great sign.
Harold Buell.
Hi, my name's Harold Buell. Reside at 1214 Jack Drive. My wife Gina and I own and operate Fitness First Sports and Curse Green Graphics, and we just last November celebrated our 40th year. Wonderful place to have a business. I want to specifically address the proposed electronic display minimum increase to 8 seconds. I don't know where that came from because the CRC had it at 4 seconds. As you know, it's very difficult for a small business in Kerrville to get our message out. San Antonio has a huge impact. Most people watch San Antonio TV, radio, whatever, and they're big competition in our market. My electronic sign, I think I had the second one. John Miller had his, and I got mine years ago when we built our shopping center. Has been the most cost-effective way to communicate to my customers in the community. When I first installed this sign, there were no restrictions as to how long you can go. Several years ago, I don't remember the time, but they went to a 4-second, and it actually slipped into the code with no notice, because I went there to the meeting, and Mike showed up with the change. To my knowledge, there's only 2 people in Kerrville that make this an issue, and maybe some city staff. Also, to my knowledge, there are only 2 major reasons for those that want these restrictions added to signs. 1, sign displays cause traffic issues. No facts. Nothing. Nobody's proved it. There's no evidence that that's true. Most major cities allow signs to do their message. Number 2 reason is changing sign displays are not aesthetically pleasing. Now, this becomes to be a personal preference issue, and we should not let a few dictate the rights and the choices of our businesses. My sign reflects the image of my business. I'm not going to have a trashy sign. I have a problem with a few people trying to restrict my rights to promote my business. So I'm asking the council to give the business community back its right to promote with non-restricted sign display limits. I need to be able to say, go, Tivy, go. Not go 8 seconds, Tivy 8 seconds, go. It's crazy. And I would appreciate you fixing this problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Corey Traub.
Good evening, Council. Corey Traub, 1515 FM 479. I'm going to try to go through a few things, try not to overlap some of the things that Ms. Clarkson's already mentioned. We'll start with the exempt signs. Section 92.6, number 2, touches on banners, that banners can only be 80 square foot, which is fine, but they have to be attached to your building for a permanent structure. But 2 lines down from that, in section 5, real estate banners can be mounted on or cover a solid board. I get the point there was we don't want banners flapping in the wind out on the street and falling down or causing problems, but why can't regular businesses put a banner that's on a board like a real estate would on a board? If we could address that, I know we can't give an answer right now.
What is it again, 92.6 what?
Number 2 and number 5. Does it make sense what I was asking on it? I'll move on to, I don't have the code number on it, but this was page 24, so it should be 24, 25 on the new copy. Window signs is number 12. May only occupy or cover no more than 25% of the total window surface. I just was curious, where did that come from and why? I don't see, I can maybe see the signage on your building, signage on the pole, but how much further are we going to go and how long before we start to tell you what you can have inside your building too, if we're going to start to regulate what kind of decals and how much decal you can put on your windows. Next thing was number 13, right underneath that. I believe that has been redlined. This is the part about not being able to put commercial advertisements on things like Tybee sign. If that is redlined, I would appreciate leaving it that way. Thank y'all for changing that. Where are we at here? This was under awning signs, letter D. It was page 29 of 49. Says, shall not be designed and installed as an integral architectural element of the entire building system, including compatible color and lighting. We know that's, I don't even understand what that's about. The awning can't be built into the building, or?
After you finish, I'm gonna ask Drew to run that by.
Okay. Canopy signs, A, is limited to 1 per entrance. I believe that's been redlined too. So if we can stay with that red line would be great. Electronic displays, which is number 5, section A, the 100-foot area, which Ms. Clarkson was questioning. The old ordinance was 200. Now it's 100.
Right, say that again.
The distance located along or within a distance of 100 feet of a major thoroughfare on the electronic signs. The old ordinance, they had to be within 200 feet. Now we're going to 100 feet. Is there a reason why? And can we keep it at 200? It's been at 200 since 2012 when that ordinance was adopted. I don't believe we've had a problem. My real issue, I'll go ahead and say it, the sign that's going to go up at Calvary Temple Church sooner or later is about 125 feet off of that major thoroughfare. But also, is it measured from the center of the road, the edge of the road, or the edge of DOT's actual easement? Do you mind if I have several more? Okay, that's one question on that. The electronic signs being framed and bordered, again, is redlined. I appreciate changing that. I think that was the best move to do that. Also under electronic displays, letter E says, shall be supplied with underground electrical service from the electric utility's feeder line / pole. I don't know if we knew what that was doing, but that's basically saying we cannot hook it into a breaker in our building. It's got to have its own meter from the power line from KPUB. Is that what was actually intended? Or was it just to be underground wiring, not above ground wiring? That's an issue to me. I don't know if it's possible to do everywhere, and not to mention that would be putting in a separate meter for just your sign when you could tie into the sub panel in your building. I'm trying to go as quickly as I can for you. The 8-second, 4-second rule, I think it's obvious where we really want to be. It's been like that for 6-7 years now. There's no problems. There's no stats showing why we had to change it. Leave it alone. Kind of like Mama used to say, if it's not broke, don't fix it. In the freestanding sign section, this is one other thing I wanted to add. We have all the streets listed that freestanding signs are allowed in. One street I noticed is missing is G Street. I have several customers along that have called me that are waiting, that want to do things, but we're not allowing freestanding signs on G Street. Pretty much the entire street is zoned commercial. There are no residences on it. Could we add G Street into the freestanding signs that are allowed there?
Okay, we better move on, Corey.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask Drew, can you respond to some of Corey's questions?
Thank you, Drew. I think I can get most of them. Corey, catch me if I missed one. Okay. The 2 different banner signs, there is no change from the current code. I suspect the intent is that a realty sign is temporary, typically put in the yard rather than on the building, whereas a banner for the business, they want it on the building for better visibility. And probably more permanent sign, even though there is a time limitation for those signs. Window signs, because they're exempt, they do have a limitation of that 25%, so that they're not, business isn't covering the entire front of the windows, and then there is no visibility in and out of the store. Both safety reasons and the fact that it's an exempt sign and not required permitting, it is restricted down to that 25%. The awning sign, Go back to the right language here. That it shall not be designed and installed as an integral architectural element of the entire building system, including compatibility and color. This isn't talking about the awning itself, it's talking about the sign itself that's on the awning. So the awning itself could be part of the building, but the sign should not be the entire part of the building, I think is what the intent behind that is. The electronic separation from the roadway that we talked about as far as being 100 feet. The only current limitation in the current code is a sign within 200 feet of a residential area has to be shut off during certain hours. The addition of that 100 feet, again, was the visibility to the right location. That would be measured from the property line or the edge of the right-of-way, not from the center line. So wherever the roadway stops or begins and the private property begins is where that 100 feet would be measured from. And Corey, I missed your last one.
Can we adjust that then, or is this going to be where the property line begins? Why don't we say where the property line is?
The right-of-way line is the property line. It's the same line.
The other one, the electronic signs with underground electrical service to the utility feeder line or pole.
I'm not positive what the final intent of that is. I think more than anything, it's underground service. I don't know that there's any specific reason why it couldn't come off the building versus the utility provider.
So it doesn't require a separate meter for the sign?
The way this is worded, it would have to come from the utility feeder line, so it would be separate meter.
Oh, so the way it reads, it would require a separate meter?
That's correct.
Okay. Is that one we can look at again?
We can.
What is that again? What section is that?
Electronic displays, section 5. It's 5E. Reads, shall be supplied with underground electrical service from the electrical utilities feeder line or pole.
So we could just stop at electronic, we could cut it at where, at what point? Read that again.
If the intent is to not require a separate meter, we could say, shall be supplied with underground electrical service. And stop there.
And what letter is that?
E. E. Sorry, that is 92.9 F. No, 92.9 5E.
Okay. Ms. McLennan, another speaker?
Bruce Barton.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Bruce Barton. I live at 190 Chisholm Trail in Ingram. First of all, I'd like to say that I am encouraged that the council feels preserving dark skies over Kerrville is important enough to codify steps to that end. But as I mentioned at the first reading, I feel that the current wording of the proposed rewrite can be improved. In particular, I and some others in the community who have already spoken this evening are concerned with the language identifying the measurement of electronic messaging centers in foot candles versus nits. I know from comments expressed by members of the council 2 weeks ago that there is some confusion about why that difference is important, and to that end, I submitted to the council via email this past week an explanation of the difference and why it's important. I hope you all have had an opportunity to read through that explanation in its entirety. The issue is not really about the units used in the measurement of sign brilliance. It's about the method used to measure that brilliance and the limits put in place on that brilliance. The measurement method recommended by the International Sign Association, which is the source of the language used in the proposed ordinance, is to place an inexpensive light meter a set distance away from the sign under investigation according to a published table of sign square footage versus measurement distance, and take two measurements, with the sign turned off and then again with it turned on. The difference between the two measurements must be less than 0.3 foot candles. There is no hard limit to how bright a sign can be. It just has to be no brighter than 0.3 foot candles above whatever the ambient lighting already is. In other words, The higher the level of existing light pollution in the immediate area of an electronic sign, the brighter that sign can be. It's right there in the language. On the other hand, the method recommended by the International Dark Sky Association requires a more sophisticated light meter to be placed perpendicular to the sign under investigation, with it programmed to an all-white screen at the intended nighttime intensity level, and is best done during manufacture or immediately after installation, measured between 1 hour after sunset and 1 hour prior to sunrise and prior to normal usage. That brilliance measurement is expressed in nits. The max allowed by ordinance would therefore be a hard limit on the contribution of that sign to the overall light pollution over the city. The IDA recommended limit is 160 nits for urban areas and 80 nits for suburban areas. It boils down to what the council's goals are for the city. If the intent is to merely stop complaints and prevent super bright signs from creating a safety hazard for drivers and pedestrians, then by all means, the foot candles approach is appropriate. However, if the goal includes a desire to reduce the contribution of such signs to the nighttime sky pollution over Kerrville, then the correct approach is the direct measurement of a sign's brilliance in nits. It's my hope that we use the IDA recommendations of measurement of a sign's intrinsic brightness in nits rather than the ISA language of illumination in foot candles to help protect the nighttime skies over Kerrville in accordance with the vision statement as expressed in the Kerrville 2050 Comprehensive Plan. Kerrville will be a vibrant, welcoming, and inclusive community that respects and protects the natural environment that surrounds it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bruce, I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
I think I know the answer to this. If I've got a business and here's my sign, and we change to nits as measurement, how does that affect me in terms of what I need to do as a businessman?
If you're already in compliance with existing codes, my understanding is that those signs are grandfathered until they need to be replaced or significantly altered. At that time, you would need to ensure that your sign falls under the new code, correct? So you would need to find a correct measurement reading, a luminance meter that you could use to bring your sign into compliance with the new code. And my understanding is that there are numerous references on the web about how you can actually procure those instruments and how to take those measurements to make sure your sign is in code.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
George Baruti.
George Baruti, everybody knows where I live. Along with other people that have already said it, I'm not going to belabor it. If there's no data to back the 8-second change, I don't understand why you guys would kind of whimsically change that. So I would suggest provide the data or just put it back to 4 seconds. Content neutrality is something I brought up last time, and I see it's still there. So I'm questioning the community service sign, just the ability to even have that. So that's one. The other that I asked about last time is still unchanged and it's a minor change. If the definition of responsible party states that the owner, operator, or advertiser are all considered responsible. So when you get to enforcement, if you leave it that way, theoretically, if I'm an advertiser on a sign, the city could come after me for problems with the signs. It's just take the advertiser
What page
out.
is that?
I'm not sure. Definitions of responsible party is a definition, so I'm assuming.
I'm in the definitions, but maybe a different place. Hard to know if we don't know where the actual location of the changes that you're requesting are.
Well, it's in definitions, and I assumed it was alphabetical, but I'm not sure.
There's 2 definition sections, but I'll find it. Sorry? Thank you.
And then the last part is I think everybody's pretty much aware that the non-compliant chamber TU services sign is what prompted this sign ordinance being reviewed, sort of being done speedier than it would have been maybe otherwise. And it was stated that by the city that we were deferring adjudication on that sign until a sign code rewrite could be completed. It is now essentially at the end of tonight being completed, and the rewrite seems to not only grant the city, but obligate the city to finally adjudicate that sign. Is the city anticipating or preparing to sue or be sued by the Chamber of TV Services? And the reason I ask that is because last meeting day, you all went into executive session to discuss under attorney advice, I guess, 551071, to discuss sign code enforcement, which I guess you could only go in there under pending or contemplating litigation. So has the city been sued, or are we anticipating that happening based on changes that are being made in the sign ordinance? Do we know that?
No.
We don't know it, or it hasn't been sued?
It hadn't happened. I'm going to ask the city attorney.
That's a correct statement.
Yeah. Okay.
So you must be contemplating something, otherwise you wouldn't have gone into executive session last time, correct?
No, I can give them legal advice in closed session.
We don't have to go into that. That's fine. It's not what it says in the Open Meetings Act, but that's okay.
It does say that, George.
When a government body seeks the advice of its attorney about pending or contemplated litigation or a settlement offer.
No,
That's
you're
what
not
it
reading
says.
the whole thing.
And so,
What does the whole thing say? Do you have the whole definition?
which?
What you just read, if you weren't reading the
551071, a government body may not conduct a private consultation with its attorney when the government, except when the governmental body seeks the advice of its attorney about A and B, pending or contemplated litigation or a settlement offer, or on a matter in which the duty of the attorney to the governmental body under the Texas disciplinary rules of professional conduct of the State Bar of Texas clearly conflicts with this chapter.
And that's it. That's it. You read it.
But George, I don't think that has to do with what we're trying to talk about here.
Sure it does. A sign code ordinance, and I was asking if there was a litigation coming out of contemplation of this. That's what we're talking about. Sorry,
Okay.
I'm done there.
Okay. Ms. McClellan?
Linda Stone. Hello, Linda Stone, 903 Tanglewood Lane, and my husband and I own property at Clay and Sydney and Shriner Streets, which is commercial property. We put in our signs under the old ordinance, and they're not lit and they're not fancy, and we think it speaks to our business. I was coming today to say thank you for listening to all of us citizens about all of these complaints. This is a very big deal. Apparently, everyone has their own opinion on how this will be, and I don't envy you having to vote on this. I wanted to say I like a small town feel, and I don't think the big signs give the feel that most people come to Kerrville to relax and get away from big cities. I know that we're getting bigger. I know we have a lot of businesses who want to be recognized, and it's a very hard balance to shift, but I just want to say we like the smaller signs. We don't like the lit up signs, but it's up to the individual property owner also and that business person to call whether they are attracting the kind of clients they want. It's a very hard deal. I just wanted to support the ordinance like it was. I also wanted to say I was not here for the first reading, but I did watch it on the recording, and it seemed to me at some point there was a vote not to pass it. It seemed like there was like it was not going to pass that night, and then by the end of the reading it did pass. It seems like there's still a lot to work out, and so I don't know if this should really be the second final reading. It just seemed like a lot to still talk about. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Pablo Brinkman.
Yeah.
Pablo Brinkman, 3928 Oak Park Drive, Kerrville, Texas. Proudly Kerrville. I'm in support of staff's work, of community, kind of echoing what Kim said, just the amount of effort that's put into things. Several of the red lines that staff's done have addressed some concerns that some clients and myself had.
Signs are important, and I think somebody had said last reading that, signs are going to go away. Signs aren't going to go away. And, you can put a lot of stuff in your phone, but if you're in commerce and you're trying to advertise your business, whatever that is, and you're in compliance, you should be allowed to do so. The one of the questions I had on and Drew, this may be circle back to you, but if let's say you have Joe Smith has this property and he's leasing it to someone, they like donuts, and it's conforming, or let's say it was grandfathered.
Well, I need you to speak this direction so I can hear you, please.
Grandfathered, non-conforming. As long as that landlord or that owner doesn't sell the property, but he gets new tenants in there, if he gets new tenants and we relight the sign, do you lose that grandfathered? Same thing for similar things to what Corey said, or this gentleman, I'm sorry, that was talking about light meters and things like this. There's a lot of cost involved for signs to be brought into possibly what he's wanting to do. So there's a lot more that goes into this versus just, you're going to change this from A to B. It's a long way from A to B on some of these things. So for commercial aspects, how's that going to affect, as long as I can continue to lease to you, but if I leave from Gary and go to Kim, do I lose things on a non-conforming sign? So those are some of the questions that I think need to think. And then also Kim had asked Mayor if we find things later that need to be adapted, similar to code, similar to everything else. I think the overwhelming answer is, hey, we're willing to keep working to make things right. So that may happen. So I appreciate you saying, yes, we'd look at things down the road.
Well, and I think, just like you've seen the redlining from last reading of the sign code to this, there is a responsiveness.
Very much so.
And just like in the zoning code, we had 4 people that night say, I want an exemption here, I want an exemption here. And what we said was, we can't deal with all those exemptions tonight, but we're going to be open to that. Come back, talk to us, so forth. Yeah. Right. But you said something about losing the grandfather. We're not about losing grandfathers. We don't want to do that.
No.
All right.
No, I'm going to let Drew step in on that one. I'm going to let you have that one.
Go back to non-conforming instead of grandfather. A non-conforming sign that continues its use with no break, no discontinued use for a period of 180 days or more can remain. If it's a multi-tenant sign, then if you lose one tenant, then the remainder of the sign is still being used. And with regard to the electronic display and the operational requirements, those would have to come into compliance within 30 days of the ordinance, whether it be time delay or brightness factor. So all of those electronic display functions would have to be updated. That was a question from Mr. Barton. But to Pablo's question, as far as the grandfathered use, if the sign is still used by one of the tenants, then I believe it could continue to be used.
All right. Okay. Ms. McLennan?
Andy Sanchez?
My name's Andy Sanchez. I have a business at 212 G Street West, and I just wanted to see if we could adapt the freestanding sign to G Street as well. I have a small business, and it's very difficult for anybody to see me there to begin with, but G Street is, for some reason, not on the list of streets where we can have a freestanding sign.
And that had been raised before as well. Okay. Let me just ask you this, Andy. If I'm going from Water Street on G Street, across the bridge, you're up there on the right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it was on the right-hand side.
Yeah.
It's just really difficult for a small business there. I mean, first of all, nobody knows we're there, and second of all, I have no signage, so it's almost impossible. But we've been surviving, but I just wanted to add G Street to that if possible.
I'm afraid this is going
Just
to
to
come
clarify,
up.
I mean, you have signage, but you can't have a freestanding sign.
No, I have a sign in the building, but you can't see it from the main streets anywhere. You would have to be going
But you
down.
can't have signage, is what I'm saying. But right now, you're not allowed to have a freestanding sign.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. This can sound like an advertisement, but Andy knows cars.
Thank you. That is all.
Good to know.
Could we have Drew give us, there was an answer to G Street, wasn't there, Drew?
The future zoning is actually mixed use, so there would be, could be some residential component to that in the future. Looking at the current limitations on some of the other streets for freestanding signs, of course, your major arterials all allow for the freestanding signs. Some of the collectors, looking at, Shriner between Highway 16 and Pascal, still hitting that commercial corridor. Clay Street between Quinlan and Hayes, between McFarland and Highway 27. Francisco Lemos between Shriner and Water Street. And each of those kind of stop before you get to that river corridor. Based on that, I suspect that the original list kept those freestanding signs off of the river, the block to the river. I wasn't here when that was written. That's just kind of reading into it there. But I suspect that was part of that. G Street is a collector, so it's not a major traffic corridor. Of course, it is one of the crossings of the river, so there's quite a bit of traffic on it.
Okay, I don't understand. Are you seeing a way for folks to do freestanding signs on G?
We would have to amend that section, but it's not something we've studied as far as what that location would be. Again, every other street that allows it stops it before you get to the river.
Now, Drew, so it's a zoning issue at this point in time?
No, it was mentioned that it's a commercial area. The future zoning is actually mixed use. So I was just clarifying that there is potential for a residential component moving forward.
Yeah, and I'm,
correct me if I'm wrong,
is this the same issue? Is this kind of the same issue that Steve King was addressing? That
Same
he wanted
area.
that area rezoned, and he was going to come back and apply?
That's correct.
To have that rezoned, and if it does get rezoned, as Mr. King is requesting, did that then change the sign?
The sign's not directly related to the zoning, so it is just that limitation of those streets that are allowed a freestanding sign under that section. So we would have to amend this section to allow G Street.
Regardless of zoning.
So zoning would be changed
This one's
and
moved
then
to
amend this.
No, it's not tied to zoning at all.
So what section?
Someone mentioned that it is a commercial corridor. The future zoning is not strictly commercial. There is a residential component in the future zoning.
9295.
I'm a little bit confused, and Andy can visit with you further about that.
And not prepared to give any kind of
Yeah,
recommendation.
right. Not definitive, right? Sure.
Mr. Mayor, what he's saying is that there's no other way to allow for that unless you add G Street to section under freestanding where you list out the other streets.
What section is that again?
Okay.
It's on page 34, under freestanding signs, number 7. There's a list of streets.
Right.
So you'd have to add G Street there.
Right.
There is no zoning fix to this. You have to fix it here.
Right.
All right. Okay. Okay, Ms. McMahon.
That is all the citizen speakers. However, there were 2 citizen speakers that submitted their request after the ordinance was read into record.
I've got to hold to it. The request needs to come in before we move into the item. So so we have all the speakers?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If you sign up, yes, but if we're into the session, into that issue, then no. Okay, council. Ms. Burton, there have to be rules. Okay, council, where do you want to go with this?
Well, I was prepared to make a motion, but my motion has grown a little bit.
Yeah.
So
Maybe there's 3 items on your motion.
Yes. The one that I would want to go back to, one I can add, that's good. the one I'd go back to, the 92.5E, the underground electric service. What came out of that, Drew?
We said stop for service, yeah.
Here, I've got it here.
Yeah, I have it written
It
down,
needs to
too.
be amended to read, shall be supplied with underground electrical service,
I've
period.
got
Shall be supplied.
I've got 5 amendments.
5?
Mm-hmm.
5. Okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna suggest we do this. I will make a motion that we adopt the sign ordinance. And if I get a second to that, then council members can amend that. And, I have to okay the amendment, but anyway.
Well, I think this could be an ongoing issue.
But, let's do that, and then, so I'm making a motion that we adopt the sign ordinance. Now, I'm gonna start on the right here and see what amendment, do I have a second to that?
I'll second.
Okay, got a second. I'm gonna start with Mr. Cochran, and let's see what kind of amendments we're looking at. Okay.
But don't we need to vote on adopting it first and then do each individual?
No.
If y'all are clear with what you're doing, I mean, that it's up to you. I mean, you have a motion on the floor, it's been seconded to adopt this, and now you can consider amendments, but it seems to be, Mayor, if I may suggest, what you might want to do instead is come up with a list of amendments, and then after that, those amendments are presented to the body, then go through a motion to see if all or a portion of those amendments are adopted.
Okay. I withdraw my motion, or you withdraw your second. Okay, so let's look at the amendments we're talking about, and then we'll vote on those. Okay.
Well, I'll do one. I would like to amend the page 33, item O, which would be changed to read, shall not exceed a light intensity or brightness level of 500 nits at night or 7,000 nits during the day. And that goes back to, that's actually what we already had in the old code, or in the present, the code we're looking at.
Okay.
So changing to 500 nits at night, 7,000 nits during the day.
7,000?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I would suggest on 92-9-5E should be amended to read, shall be supplied by underground electrical service, period.
Okay. Shall be supplied. All right, I'm going to get you to repeat that when we get to it, okay? All right.
Okay.
Ms. Clarkson.
My first would be page 33, 92.9 electronic displays, 92-9.5I. I would like to strike the word 8 and replace it with 5, so that it says shall operate. Shall operate in a way that its message remains static for a minimum of 5 seconds. The reason I say that is because what I've been reading suggests that it takes 3 seconds to be able to process a message, and that would allow for time to process the message so that you're not continually readjusting to the message, but also to support business and the amount of time they have for their signs.
Okay. You got 5?
Yes. Okay. And my next one, Judy covered. My next one is on page, I believe, 30 under 92.9, awning signs, 1C. I want to strike the word may not, change the word, and then change the word but or on line 1. So it reads, I'm going to tell you how it reads so it's not confusing. This is page 30. Sorry, I have to get there myself. 1C, let's see. under awning signs. Awning sign, item C, may be internally illuminated or may be illuminated using downward focused wall mounted.
So you're taking the word not out?
I'm striking shall not and inserting may.
For internally lighted?
May be.
Can you explain why?
Because I asked and I couldn't find a reason that suggested that it was something that would be problematic, that maybe it would be more of a choice of the business. Do you see?
Mr. Paxton, can I ask you a question? This may just be my lack of understanding, but I'm trying to think kind of a worst case scenario that, so if I've got a crystal clear canopy, balloon, whatever it may be, and I internally light that, it's basically a floodlight beacon. Is that correct?
Yeah, it could be pretty exposed lighting at that point.
Okay.
Okay, another one?
Page 34, freestanding signs. It's 92.9. 7. And I can't read my writing.
We just need to add.
Oh, and it's I want to add to freestanding signs A, I want to add a number 9 to include G Street for the area between Sidney Baker Street and Memorial Boulevard. And I'm not sure if I should name those by their highway references.
How's it best to do that?
But I want to add number 9 to the freestanding sign list to say G Street for the area between the way the others read. Would it be Sidney Baker Street South and Memorial Boulevard, or would I name those with the highways? No. Okay.
Either one would work. Highway 16 and Highway 27 would work.
Okay, one more.
One more. 92.9.5 electronic display. That's on page 32. Let's see. Oh, that one's already been made. Is that the one where we're going to say shall be supplied with underground electrical and then strike the rest?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So that's it.
All right.
Um,
You have another one?
No, but I'm very uncomfortable because there's some I want to vote for, but there's some I don't.
Right.
So I either have to vote
We'll vote
no
for them individually.
for the whole thing.
No, we'll vote for them individually.
We need to,
Yeah.
please.
Okay.
I would like to recommend that I know I feel like we're splitting hairs here, but, maybe the 8 was a drastic change in seconds, but I think the 4, even though I appreciate advertisement, I have read the studies on the safety factor. No, there aren't any reports or actual crashes that have occurred because of it, but I do think I was going to suggest a happy medium of 6. I mean, it's not going to make everyone happy, and it's, I don't know if it.
Why don't we just do the 5, and if it doesn't pass, then we can.
We'll probably vote on both.
I just said I'd keep.
Let's, and I'm going to list that as one of our amendments.
It gets us a little closer to some of the concerns some of the other citizens did have. So
yeah, 6 seconds. Okay. Before we vote, I want to say something. I said the form of this when we were here before on this issue. Sometimes when we adopt something like this, folks feel like we are not business friendly, that we're out telling businesses what you have to do and here's the compliance and all of that. I want to tell you, I have found this staff and this council to be very business friendly. We spent the last hour working on this before we came down to the council meeting. What I'm spending a lot of time on these days, workforce housing, has to do with us getting workers housing who are already here and who are coming here for businesses. Same on economic development. But I know also, and I know a bunch of business people in this town, that it is tough in business today. If you look at your online competitors, your big box competitors, your chain stores, folks going to San Antonio, it is just tough. And what we want to do, and I think are doing, is balancing commitment to businesses that are here and commitment to all the citizens in terms of creating the best kind of community possible. So, having said that, I'm going to go through these amendments. If you will vote yes or no. And the first one is to go, what Ms. Eichner talked about going to the use of...
Don't we have to have adopt? We can't
No, we're going to do amendments.
Yeah, we can do the amendments, then come back and do the motion with the amendments. Okay, the first one is the matter of the measurement of nits, 500 nits at night, 7,000 during the day, so different measurement. All in favor of that?
We need a motion.
We need a motion.
Yeah, okay. You got it.
Or second.
You make the motion.
I will make a motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. All right. All in favor of that amendment, if you'd let it be known with a raised hand. Okay. And it passes 5-0. The next one, Mr. Cochran, would you read that for us?
Section 92-9-5, subsection E shall be amended to read, shall be supplied by underground electrical service, period.
Okay. All right. Yeah, got a motion and a second. All in favor of that, let it be known with raised hands. Okay. The next one is the move to that 5-second interval. And we talked about that. It was originally 4, then 8. We're looking at this one at 5 seconds.
So my motion is, yes, my motion is to, for 92-9 electronic displays, 5I, strike the word 8, replace with 6, so that reads, shall operate in a way that its message remains static for a minimum of 5 seconds.
Okay, all right. Okay, we got a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor of the 5 seconds, let it be known by the raised hand. Okay, it's 2, all against, if you raise your hand. 2, 3, okay. Now, let's look at 92.9, page 30. Oh, yeah, the internally lighted awning.
I want to take that. I want to remove that motion. I want to study that further and come back with a recommendation on that.
All right. Okay. Then the motion regarding adding G Street to the list of streets that would have freestanding signs.
So that motion would be 92.9.7 to add is it number 8 or number 9? Number 9, to read G Street for the area between Sidney Baker Street South and Memorial Boulevard.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. All in favor of that? Okay, we've got it's 4-1. All opposed, same sign. Okay, and then our last one is Ms. Eichner's motion of doing the 6-second interval.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have the section? I don't have it handy. I was just.
Yes.
Why don't you had.
Yeah.
So it's page 33, item 1, and we would strike 8 and put in 6.
Okay, all right. Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we've got a motion, a second. All in favor of that move to 6 seconds? Okay, and it is unanimous, 5-0. Now, with those amendments, we come back to the sign ordinance. And my motion is that we pass the sign ordinance with those amendments.
Second.
Okay, got a second? All in favor? Let it be known with a raised hand. Okay, and all right, good.
Yes, yay.
And can I make a comment?
Yes.
If there's something that we weren't able to address tonight, will you please let us know so that we can look at it further? It's really difficult to be up here and try and look at some of these things for the first time. So if that's your desire for us to look further into something, please don't hesitate to do that.
You know, I will have to say this, Pablo, I was listening to you, but I was also thinking, you're talking about change of owners, if you had a laundry that changed to a restaurant, but they wanted to keep the laundry sign, that'd be kind of interesting.
I'm trying to work out that grandfather thing.
Okay, all right. Ms. McElhannon, if you will give us the ordinance adopting the annual budget.
Ordinance number 2019-21, second reading. An ordinance adopting the annual budget for the City of Kerrville, Texas fiscal year 2020, providing appropriations for each city department and fund, containing a cumulative clause and containing a savings and severability clause. There are no citizen speakers signed up.
Okay, I make a motion to approve ordinance number 2019-21 to adopt the city's budget for fiscal year 2020 on second reading.
Okay.
I second.
Ms. Dozier's going.
I'm here if you have any questions. but
Okay. I want you to know they didn't all leave because of you.
I took the first one.
Yeah, okay. We have a motion. We've got a second to adopt the budget.
This will need to be a roll call vote.
Yes.
Yeah, roll call vote.
Yes, and I believe you have the exact wording
Yes.
in front of you.
Ms. Clarkson has the first motion.
Do I need to read that again, or is it in?
Yeah. I think you need to read it
Do I
again.
need to read it again?
You've made a motion, right?
Right.
In a second, so she'll take the roll call vote, and then you'll have to make that other motion.
I thought we did a roll
Councilmember
call vote
Cochran?
after the first motion.
I made it, but I was a little premature, but it's okay. It's
Oh,
still
okay,
read in.
got
It's
you,
still
got
in.
you. Okay,
Yes.
all right, we got a second.
I didn't give Ms. Dozier a chance to tell
Yeah,
us.
okay, all right. So,
Councilmember
roll
Cochran?
call vote.
I vote yes.
Councilmember Clarkson?
I vote yes.
Mayor Blackburn?
I vote yes.
Councilmember Ackner?
Yes.
Councilmember Sigerman?
Yes.
All right, okay. Okay, second motion.
I move that we ratify, I may have a motion to ratify, no,
Yes.
I'm ratifying the vote to adopt the budget that will require raising more revenue from property taxes than the previous fiscal year.
I'll second.
Okay, we got a second.
Second.
Okay, we got a second down here, okay.
You can have it if you want.
Any discussion? Okay. All in favor, let it be known by the raised hand, and it is unanimous, okay? Let me say that there ought to be bells and whistles, because this process was started in February with the department submitting their budgets, and it has gone through a long process, but important process, so. And it's all on the website, right?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, all right. Okay. All right, ordinance number 2019-20.
Ordinance number 2019-20, second reading. An ordinance levying an ad valorem tax for the use and the support of the municipal government of the City of Kerrville, Texas for fiscal year 2020, providing for apportioning each levy for specific purposes and providing when taxes shall become due and when shall become delinquent if not paid. And this will also be a roll call vote.
Okay, and again, let me jump in front of you. I meant to say this before, on that second motion that Ms. Ackner made about, more revenue from property taxes than in the previous fiscal year. Our rate has not changed in 10 years. Actually gone this year, gone down, but we will receive more because of the appraisals and so forth. So, okay.
That's correct. And once again, this is the second reading, and nothing has changed since the first reading. I just put up the same slide that you've seen multiple times, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
All right, okay. Council, any questions?
I move that ordinance number 2019-20 be adopted and that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of 0.5400 which is effectively a 3.4% increase in the tax rate.
I'll second it.
Okay, we got a motion second. We need a roll call vote.
Good at that tonight.
Councilmember Cochran,
I vote yes.
Councilmember Clarkson,
Yes.
Mayor Blackburn,
Yes.
Councilmember Eichner,
Yes.
Councilmember Sigerman.
Yes.
All right, we're unanimous. Okay, 5D, ordinance number 2019-22. You'll read that for us.
Ordinance number 2019-22, second reading. An ordinance creating a planned development district for agricultural, commercial, mixed use, office, open space, residential, and wireless telecommunication facilities on tracts of land making up an approximate 264.22 acres as defined herein, and within the city of Kerrville, Kerr County, Texas. More generally located southeast of the intersection of Farm to Market Road 783, Harper Highway, and Interstate 10, and adjacent to and north of Holsworth Drive. Adopting a concept plan and conditions related to the development of said district, repealing ordinance numbers 2004-15 and 2017-19, which established the previous zoning of the property, containing a cumulative clause, containing a savings and severability clause, establishing a penalty or fine not to exceed $2,000 for each day of violation of any provision hereof, ordering publication, and providing other matters relating to the subject. And we do have one citizen speaker signed up.
Okay, Mr. Paxton.
Second reading, just here to answer any questions if you have any.
This may be a question for Mr. Strachey, but I'm not pushing this, but I'm asking, in that development, is there hope for some workforce housing?
That's a great question, and there actually is hope for it. In fact, in the ordinance, in areas where there would be live-work allowed, that would be perfect for workforce housing there, and in the blended area, there's density and such that would allow that as well. So yes, there is a hope for workforce housing in that area, within the 264 acres. And frankly, I cannot wait to see the first live-work housing establishments be brought to Kerrville. And so I'm very hopeful that I'll be successful at that.
Okay.
Thank you for asking.
All right, thank you. Any questions of Mr. Paxton?
I asked mine last time.
Okay, we have a speaker.
Yes, sir. George Baruti.
Okay.
Do you guys have the map to put up there so I can ask?
Okay. Can we put the map up again?
The non-color one, just.
I do not have it up there.
Okay, all right.
George, I know I'm being picky here, but what I would like is if you would give your address, but if you would use Kerrville like everyone else does and not, just out of respect for the venue that you're in and for the city, if you would use Kerrville and pronounce it as Kerrville.
George Baruti, 1616 Glen Road, Kerrville.
Kerrville, thank you.
So the questions I was going to ask about the map is the same ones I asked last time, and I came back with a little better information to clarify what Ms. Siegerman was remembering. First of all, the one question has to do with the PDD in the first place. Generally speaking, we're supposed to be trying to reduce the number of uses of them. Arguably, that may not be the best way to go, but it is what we've been stating as a policy here. And yet, the ink is barely dry on our zoning ordinance, and here we are. The area that's down closest to, it's bordered by Holsworth, Town Creek, Home Run Drive, and Calou Boulevard. All that area originally, it's the 4.7 it's being listed as commercial, but sure, that's fine. That was basically 2 years.
Go ahead.
Okay, 2 years ago, it was brought up as a concern, environmental concern having to do with fuel sales. Original PDD actually made it so you couldn't put one in there. And at that time, 2 years ago, the representative for the landowner, it was John Hewitt standing here, actually said the landowner didn't have a problem with foregoing fuel sales in that one little part if it was a concern. And it was to the community and, at the time, council. So my request would basically be to ask the developer to consider not changing the entire plan, but maybe calling that one little section blended use or whatever makes it work, so it's not fuel sales. And it's kind of in honor of what the landowner representative said last meeting at the sign ordinance, which is looking to preserve and protect the natural beauty of Kerrville. And they were speaking of signs, but it applies just as equally to most people, I think, when we're talking about the river. I understand that the EPA has its regulations. They had those before, and yet the community still sought to have that little extra protection, if you will, for our natural resources. And so, like I said, I would just request that the landowner consider making a change there just in that one land use in that one little section.
Bert, can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
So you're dealing specifically with the 4.7 acre tract?
Correct.
Not the 17.6, the 8.9 that also adjoin Holdsworth, but just the 4.7 acres?
It's not Holdsworth that is joining, and it's actually the, as I look at the map, originally it was a PDD, and it was trying to get a distance of 600 feet, basically, from Town Creek. And if I'm remembering that map correctly, the commercial zone, which is what that 4.7 is, allows for fuel sales, but the other land use definitions didn't allow it.
It's the distance. It's the distance to Town Creek compared to the others for fuel sales.
I understand you don't want it there. I don't understand why you don't want it there.
The proximity to Town Creek and the historical land use available on that particular piece of property. 2 years ago and in the prior PD.
I understand what y'all voted for.
No. In the the original PD for that area made the stipulation that fuel sales wouldn't be there. So we just carried it forward 2 years ago. And I'm just asking to continue to carry that forward because it was a concern historically for the Town Creek area. I'm not really sure when you're asking about the other areas, I'm not sure where they are on the map because I'm not looking at the map.
I think the question has been answered as to why you were looking specifically at that one, right?
Yeah, it was just consistency with the.
The city did not allow a gas station at Walmart. How far was that to the river than this is? And I don't know. I mean,
I don't know the answer to that either. And that got brought up 2 years ago too. And I'm not sure, but I don't think the Walmart situation. I think there was an ordinance or something in place at that time that people were referencing, but I'm not even sure.
You're just point of interest, consideration. That's what you're asking for. So
correct.
But this, and this may be a staff issue. This may be, I'm not sure whose issue it is. To be honest with you, but my understanding is TCUQ and the EPA have pretty strict standards how close a fuel station can be located to a waterway?
They have standards, yes they do. They had standards before.
So we're trying to make something stricter than what they would normally put into place?
Similar to what the landowner wanted to do with the sign ordinance, yes. They wanted to make stricter requirements to preserve the natural resources of this particular area, yes.
Okay.
Just for clarification, the zoning code, current and future, uses within 100 feet of the 100-year flood zone are prohibited for gasoline sales. Uses within 500 feet of the 100-year floodplain or 1,000 feet of Nimitz Lake impoundment area are required a conditional use permit. So that would still apply to this.
So that would
protect it. This is going to fall into that.
Even though the way the PD is written, this has other
other requirements.
Right, well, that supersede.
Yeah, so they'd still have to come back and get a conditional use permit in this situation.
So we're not giving them carte blanche to
If it's within
put fuel cells in. That would still be a decision from.
If it's within 500 feet of the 100-year flood zone, which part of Town Creek is, if they're outside of that 500 feet, they would be allowed.
Okay, does the council have further questions?
No, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Can I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the ordinance for the Planned Development District.
All right, do I hear a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor of that motion, let it be known by the raised hand, and it is 5-0. Okay, we move to resolution number 37, 2019.
Resolution number 37-2019, a resolution amending the City of Kerrville fee schedule by revising fees charged for various services and uses provided or offered by the city.
All right. Hello again. Since this is the first annual fee change process for some of y'all, I wanted to put together a few slides just explaining the process and the changes to make sure all the changes are clear and any of your questions are answered before you have to vote on it. We've discussed many of these items before, so I'll go through fairly quickly, but please let me know if you have questions. So basically, the proposed fiscal year 2020 fee schedule, the fee schedule is annually updated as part of the budget process. So we have fee schedule changes that happen every October 1st. Most of the fee schedule changes we have discussed in the budget workshops that are listed here. And then also in your proposed budget book, you have to get all the way to page 313, but if you make it all the way there, then they're all in there and they're highlighted for you. So some of the things that we commonly change every year, garbage fees are changed every year. We have a contract with Republic Services who performs our trash pickup service, and part of their contract allows those fees to be changed every year according to a consumer price index. Also, we have multiple fees in the fee schedule that are based on actual cost of materials or labor, such as our meters, water meters, that kind of thing. Those prices change every year, so we change the fee accordingly as well. As part of the budget process, we ask all the departments to review their fees and to specifically make any recommended changes. And they look at the cost of providing services. As you know, we've done different cost analysis, outside studies such as our utility rate study, and then we use standardized factors like inflation factors to look at the cost of providing service. We also compare our fees to other cities or other entities providing similar service to make sure that we are not an outlier in any way before we propose changes. And then, of course, the fee schedule can have new offerings on it. So this year, for example, we have a new mermaid class that we didn't have before, things like that. And then we also look for ways to simplify the fee schedule or the process, and I'll discuss some of this as it relates to building services as we go through. So the main categories of fees that we're proposing to change are in the water and sewer area, parks and recreation, solid waste, golf, EMS, and then I just have a catch-all other category. So on the water and sewer rates, these are slides directly taken from budget workshops that y'all have already attended, and so I think you're pretty familiar with them. But you know, we did a rate study this year with New Gen Strategies and Solutions. We focused on cost recovery, comparison to other cities, and the actual structure of our rates. And we're coming to you recommending that that rate structure be changed some, that we include the first 1,000 gallons in the base charge of our water and sewer, and that we put into place more of a water conservation strategy. And we've done analysis on the impact there, so it comes out to an average increase of $2.06 a month. When you look at it on a frequency distribution basis, we're looking at the majority of our users seeing an increase of $1.76 a month or less on the combined changes in the water and sewer rate. And we will also offer a new in-house program for any qualifying customers that this creates a hardship for. And then we have looked at, even with the rate change, how we compare to other cities. You can see from this chart that, we're pretty much in the middle, and even with the rate change, that doesn't change our ranking. On the Parks and Recreation side, we have proposed changes at Kerrville Shriner Park, relatively small increases for RV sites and cabin and house rentals. So Kerrville Shriner Park compares themselves to Texas state park rates. And so we're right in line there. It's an older park, and these increased fees help pay for maintenance that comes along with older parks.
That's still very reasonable.
Yes. It's
I've
definitely very
checked
competitive.
rates at other parks, and it's higher than $5.
Yeah, thanks for the input on that. Yeah. Parks and Recreation is also adding some new field rental options at Kerrville Sports Complex that they didn't offer before. We've also just added some informational portion to our fee schedule about rates by agreement and rates through DBAT for some of the Kerrville Sports Complex activities. We've always had that, but we just put it more explicitly on the fee schedule. And then we have had an increase in our hourly athletic field, court, and pool rental rates. It's been more than 5 years since the last increase in any of those rates, and obviously the cost of our staff has gone up in that time, so we're recommending some changes there. And then at the Olympic pool, we've added an option to rent the pavilion for a full day instead of just 2 hours, and then also the mermaid class that we talked about. And these page numbers that you're seeing on these slides reference the proposed budget book. So they're page numbers in the proposed budget book. Solid waste. So the solid waste fee that we're proposing that's new, we discussed during our June workshop. And it relates to recycling. So right now you can take recycling materials to the transfer station, and that's free for anyone who takes it, whether they are a current city garbage customer or not. Our residential customers already have curbside recycling, so they're not using this transfer station option very often. It does cost us about $68,000 to operate that recycling drop-off site, and it's not serving, it could be serving some city customers, but a lot of the customers it's serving live outside the city and don't pay for the city garbage service. So we discussed this in June and talked about charging a nominal fee for those customers. So we're proposing a $2 per load fee for customers without city garbage service. If you still want to drop off something there and you bring a copy of your water bill, you would not be charged a fee. And then the other increases are based on the city's contract with Republic Services. There's actually a consumer price index specific to trash collection. So that's the index that they use. And per our contract, there's a cap of 4% as the most increase in a 1-year period. And actually, that CPI was 4.97 this year, but we capped it at 4%. So there's a 4% increase on those Republic Services rates. Moving on to golf. So golf, we've also talked about in our workshops. So you know that we're doing some restructuring over there, and we're looking at offering some enhanced programming and management support from the Parks and Recreation Department. We're also looking at increasing green fees and cart fees in a $1 to $4 range, depending on the fee. And we're also looking at ways that we can attract more players by offering different categories of rates, such as military and college, an unlimited monthly rate, a quarterly membership instead of only an annual, a family membership. So those things have been added to the fee schedule. The next one is in the emergency medical services category. This is one that we didn't specifically talk about in the workshop, so I wanted to go over that. So we bill our emergency medical services through an outside medical billing provider, a company called R1 that does medical billing across the country. And we work with them when we're doing our rate setting. And just as for your information, Kerrville's rates are lower than the other clients that R1 serves, and they do an analysis for us each year comparing our rates to similar sized cities. So we have a plan with them that we'd like to change those ambulance rates on an every other year basis. So fiscal year 20 would be an every other year. And we base it on this federal ambulance inflation factor. So once again, this is an inflation factor from, an outside party.
Where does that number come from?
It's based on, so it starts with CPI kind of data, and then it looks at specific to ambulances, but it is around the country. Eric, is there anything else that you want to add about that rate in particular?
The ambulance inflation factor is set by the federal government for the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services. So it is based on the CPI urban. There are some other factors that they kind of look at, and it's determined every calendar year is what they do. But there is some ranges on that from actually from -% up to 3%.
We were looking at a 2-year adjustment that's just over 5% based on a 2 years worth of inflation using those factors. Also on the EMS side, we have something called non-emergency transfer agreements. And so those are agreements with hospice providers and with nursing homes where we would pick patients up from the hospital and take them to one of those facilities, but it's a non-emergency situation. And so our fire department has worked with those providers and they've asked, what's the lowest rate that we can pay for these end-of-life services that we're offering. And Medicaid rates are typically the lowest rates that we honor. And so Medicaid has rates for this. So we've said, okay, we will give you the Medicaid rate for these services. Medicaid rates change annually in January, so we're always kind of we have a fiscal year as opposed to a calendar year. So we thought that perhaps changing the fee schedule to say the Medicaid rate might make it easier where we wouldn't need to come back in January and change it if they change their rate in January to be consistent with them.
So historically, we've been charging basically the Medicaid rate. It's just we had to change it every year.
We've been charging close to the Medicaid rate, and some years we've changed it and some years we haven't. Sometimes it'll, the Medicaid rate will change, but we don't end up changing our rate until 10 months later when there is a change that's going through. Eric, is there anything else you want to add about that? Or?
These charges to the hospice and those, these are the 100% pretty much guaranteed payment from the facility. These are not being billed to the patient itself. These are the facility's responsibilities.
And just as to note, and we certainly could do it like this, if y'all think it seems confusing to put 100% of the Medicare rate, we could put a number in there. So the numbers are for the local transport, the current rate is $168 per person. The Medicaid rate that's in place right now is $186. So there's an increase there. On the mileage rate, the Medicaid allowable is actually lower than our current Medicaid, is lower than our $9 rate. So right now we have a $9 rate, but the Medicaid allowable is $4.71. And I think this came about as these providers were coming to the fire department and asking them, what's the lowest rate you can possibly give us? And they thought that that was a fair way to do it, to look at the Medicaid rates, since generally those are the lowest rates that we have. That's that piece of it. And then I'm just going to highlight a few of the other change categories. City Secretary has some changes related to filing fees. Those fees are paid to the county, so we're changing to be based on the county fees. Building services, so this is something I referenced earlier. So we have something called a general contractor license, and right now it's $500 for an annual license or $100 per project. Development Services, as you know, has been looking for ways to streamline things and make their process more efficient. So if we have more annual licenses, those are much easier for them to process than having a license with every single project. But we have contractors that aren't sure if they're going to have 5 projects in a year, and is it worth it to do the annual, or should we just do the individual project? So we think that by changing the structure to lower that annual fee but raise the individual project fee, that will make more contractors willing to do the annual license as opposed to the individual project license. Any questions for development services?
How
on
many
that?
licenses a year? Do we have any idea?
I don't have that number.
We can certainly get that for you, though.
I was
Just curious.
curious too, and how many of them pay the annual now? But, that's just out of curiosity. I don't spend a lot of time on that.
Just anecdotally from talking to Drew today, there are a lot more individual project licenses issued than annual licenses. We don't have very many annual licenses now. That's just for the bigger contractors. But yeah, moving to this fee structure, if you think you're going to have 2 projects during the year, then you might as well get the annual license as opposed to
300,
that you need to have at least 5. So that's the idea there. We also have a subsequent plan review fee. We're changing that from $60 per hour to 50% of the building permit fee. That's consistent with our other fees. It also helps us better cover our costs if we're outsourcing these plan reviews. We have a change in the occupancy fee. That's something that's been over 5 years since we had a change in that fee. So we're looking to cover our inspection costs. The fire department also did an extensive look at their fees. They have a lot of just kind of miscellaneous fees. We have a relatively new fire marshal who went through every fee and looked at what we were charging, looked at how much time they were spending doing these tasks, and then looked at other cities and what they charge. And based on that analysis, they're recommending changes to multiple fees. Most of them don't impact a lot of customers. We don't have that many fuel storage tank fees. We don't have that many hazardous material permits, that kind of thing. But we did get those fees more in line with what our costs are and where other cities are. The fire marshal does have a plan review fee, and they are recommending a change to that based on the number of hours that they spend performing that plan review. And all of these have been over 5 years with no fee change on the fire department stuff. Public Works, we discussed those increases to the tap and meter fees. We also have requested services fees that relate as well. And those are just based on specifically price increases for the parts and the labor cost increases. We also have something called septage fees. So you can bring your septic waste just in your septic waste hauler truck and put it into our pond.
Somebody else can do that.
Yes. And yeah, it's kind of a risky thing because we have to adjust our chemicals for it, and we don't know exactly what's in it and that kind of thing. And there's not very many places that even accept it. We're one of the few that do. And anyway, but we are increasing a little bit there. We still are lower than San Antonio on the cost, and we have some justification with the cost of chemicals and just the risk that we take by putting things into our system that we have to.
But at least we know where it is going.
Yes.
This is
yes,
and
that is the reason why we take it.
Like
So it doesn't
And the reuse pond?
no, I believe it just goes directly to the water reclamation plant.
Okay.
It doesn't go into the reuse pond.
That's right. It's got to be treated.
Yep. Let's see.
Sure.
All right. Well, the last slide is for. Let's see if I can get there.
Celebrating.
Yes.
You left.
There we go. Utility billing. Okay. So we are changing the new account fee. We are moving to online credit checks as opposed to asking for a faxed copy of your previous utility provider to send your credit history, which is increasingly difficult to do. So, but there is a charge for those online credit checks. So we're raising the fee to cover that. Also, we're trying to incent customer behavior, as we've spoke about before, where electronic billing and electronic payments reduces our operating costs. So we're trying to incent that with that fee structure. We've also increased our deposit amount, something we haven't done in a long time, to better cover an average monthly bill, and hopefully that will reduce the amount of accounts we have to send to collections, because basically if you don't pay your bill, then we would apply your deposit towards your balance. We've increased some service charges related to personnel costs of actually having to go out to your house, and then also related to just some banking fees like on return checks to match the fees that are being charged by the bank. We did add a specific charge related to meter tampering. We do see we wanted to highlight this because we do have issues where when we turn someone's water off, there's a lot of people that know how to turn their water back on themselves, and so they will do that. Our ordinance specifically states that you are not to tamper with the meter, but we thought by highlighting that on the fee schedule, it might be more visible that way.
Those are real quick on the,
Yes.
back on that previous slide.
Yes.
The new account fee changes
Yes.
increased cost of online
Yes.
credit check.
Mhm.
In our budget workshop, was that specifically spelled out?
We did talk about it. I handed out a fee schedule change that had it on there. I believe it was in the July workshop. And then I believe I followed up with an email that specifically talked about those, the credit checks and the increase that was related to the credit checks. I think in the workshop, we talked about the incentive of the electronic billing and the electronic payment. And then I followed up with the email on the credit check piece of it.
Thank you.
So the tampering fee is $50?
Yes, yes, and then if they damage the meter, so if they break the meter or the register or something like that, then they also would have to pay the actual cost of replacing the damaged item.
Is there one fee increase in this that you think you're going to get a bunch of kickback on?
No, I do not.
Good answer.
That was the right answer.
Good answer.
Ding, ding, ding.
Okay. Well, did what?
In 350 pages.
Oh, there's not one. Okay. All
No,
right.
I mean,
That's
I
not
know
what
it's
he
a
asked.
big deal when you change utility rates, but I think that we've studied it very carefully and we've spent a lot of time discussing it with y'all. And I feel good about the utility rate structure that we're recommending.
Well,
but
I think I would just like to say that this is one more example in regard to this the study behind this, that you've been very careful. You brought in consultants. You've looked at everything, and you've looked at what other cities are doing. And I feel like, you know, if somebody challenges, you've got an answer for them.
But I think it was also important that council brought up, you know, that y'all were interested in having a program. This did create a financial hardship for some of our customers.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so we put that in place, and we're ready to go with it when the new fees go into effect if council approves them.
Good. Now, I've got we all want to wrap this up and go home. I got a very important question.
Yes.
How much do the mermaids pay? What is their fee?
How much do we pay our mermaid teachers? That's a good
Mayor, can I make a
question.
motion?
Yeah.
Make a motion passing resolution number 37-219.
I'll second it.
Okay, I've got some more questions, Ms. Dozier. No.
Okay.
Okay, no. Okay. All in favor of that
We're
motion,
afraid of.
raise your hand. Okay. All right. Okay,
You,
thank
Amy.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
All right.
Amy. Good work.
All of the changes out. That was very
6B,
nice.
resolution number 40, 2019, and we're getting close to the end now.
Resolution number 40, 2019, a resolution nominating a candidate or candidates to Kerr Central Appraisal District Board of Directors. This item is eligible for executive session, section 551.074, personnel matters.
Okay, Ms. Dozier, I think you're up again.
You thought she got to sit down.
This is KCAD.
Okay, so I'm after KCAD.
I don't know that I think we can make a motion to approve.
All right.
You're just
okay.
ready for it.
Can I make a motion?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, then I will make a motion that we approve the resolution number 40-2019, nominating the persons listed to the KCAD Board of Directors. And if you need me to list it,
Just,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
just you.
yes. We don't do the
person.
others today.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, that would be Judy.
Unless somebody else wants to be nominated.
Okay, do we have any speakers? Do we have any-
No, sir. No
Okay.
citizens.
So that was Judy Eichner being the person who was nominated to be the liaison.
All right,
Okay.
and she will abstain from this vote. Okay, you got a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of Mrs. Eichner staying on the KCAD? Okay, it's 4-0 with Ms. Eichner abstaining. Financial update. You can go through it quickly.
I will. All right, this is my last item of the night. Financial update for the month of August. So we're going to start with the general fund, and through the end of August, year to date, general funds received revenue of $25.8 million compared to expense of $24 million. A couple of things to note on the revenue side. Our strong sales tax performance continues. Year to date, we're up 4.6% over 2018. We're also performing better than budget, and we're anticipating ending the year approximately $180,000 better than budget on sales tax. So very impressive on the sales tax this year. And looking at our general fund revenues, right now it looks like our general fund revenues are much lower than budget. And so I wanted to give you all a heads up on this. Primarily that is because the street department has some large projects going on right now that we'd initially anticipated would be done by September 30th. And I'm specifically speaking about Slurry Seal and the Hill Country Drive project. Due to contractor delays, those projects are going to stretch into October a little bit. They're not going to be finished until October. The way that we do our budget is, we don't automatically roll something over. Council has to approve that. So what we're going to be doing is I'll be bringing a year-end budget amendment to y'all in October. And we're going to see exactly how much is left on those projects, and we're going to move those operating funds actually to a project fund, but where they can pay in October and it doesn't penalize their 2020 budget, and they can use up their remaining funds. So that will be coming in October, the second meeting in October. On the water fund side, we're looking at revenues of $10.3 million compared to expenditures of $11 million. On the water sales, we continue to be, significantly below budget, which we've been talking about all year. August water sales increased 27% compared to July, so that's good.
You're
We're
welcome.
still, yes, thank you. We're still behind August of 2018. So we are looking at a pretty significant budget variance there. We're looking at ending the year something like $800,000 under budget on our water. 800, yeah. So significantly different. We do have, the way that we have to do our financial reporting, we look at when we actually supplied that water. So we bill, a month behind. So we won't know actually till the beginning part of November what all of our water supplied in September was. And so we have some adjustments that happen. So that's why I can't give you a more exact number yet. Sewer sales also a little bit lower than budget. We've been talking about that. But we have some positive news on, we have some other revenue that's been better than budget, interest revenue, some water tap and new meter fees. We also have expenditures that are lower than budget because we haven't been making as much water, treating as much water. And we've had some salary savings as well. So we're looking at ending the year probably about $600,000 in the red. One of the things that we're going to look at the end of the year, and we'll let you know when we come back with this budget amendment, but one of the things that we may do is not transfer $100,000 to asset replacement. So we had come to y'all with a budget amendment at the end of the spring, and we were looking at how we ended last year. And last year we ended with a surplus. So we got our audited financial statements the beginning of March, and we had a surplus in the water fund from 2018. And so we brought a budget amendment to y'all to say, let's move $100,000 to the asset replacement fund. If it ends up that we need the $100,000 in the water fund because of where we're ending up the year, then we're not going to transfer that $100,000 to the asset replacement fund. So more to come on that, but that's out there. Let's see. Moving on to other funds. Let's see. Development services, $1.1 million in revenues and $1.1 million in expenditures. One thing to note with development services is a few of the fees related to the middle school and the landing that we were thinking wouldn't hit until 2020 are actually happening now, so a few weeks earlier than we had anticipated. Because development services is in its own fund, we can definitely make that work. But anyway, they may look better this year, and then some of that revenue that we thought was going to happen last year is happening a little early, but we can work through that. The golf fund, year to date, this is good to see. Year to date through the end of August, golf had revenues of $840,000 and expenditures of $840,000. So their green fees in August 2019 were higher than they were in August 2018, so that's good news. And then finally, the hotel occupancy fund, revenues of $1.3 million compared to expenditures of $1.3 million. And we continue to see occupancy tax revenue better than budget and better than prior year. Couple of things on the real estate update. This is year to date, so it's not too different than what you've seen before, but just some of the takeaways are, the average or the number of homes sold is almost flat, down just like 1%, but the price, both average and median, is up, and that $100,000 to $300,000 range is still definitely where we're seeing the most activity. And then we're looking at about a 3-month supply based on those average days on market. Anything else to add to that, Mr. Strickey? And then finally, I wanted to just give you a heads up about something that's coming to your next meeting. So we have a debt issuance called Series 2011A. It was $3.5 million in debt issued for River Trail back in 2011. EIC pays the debt service on that. The debt that we issue can have different provisions in it called callable provisions. And so if debt is callable at a certain time, that basically means it's eligible to be refinanced. So, unlike your home mortgage, like you can't do that at any time. You can only do that with the provisions of the bond sale. So this 2011A, $2.6 million, that's our remaining principal to pay off, is callable in February of 2020. We have a really good rate on this debt. It's like 2% to 4% depending on the year. So we've always kind of thought, okay, there's not going to be a refinancing opportunity. But now interest rates are very low, historically low, and with the Fed cutting interest rates even further last week, it's looking like it actually may be beneficial to us to refinance that. So our friend Ann Berger Intrican from Hilltop Securities will be with us next meeting to discuss this refunding opportunity and explain the terms and explain what kind of savings we might be able to get over the remaining life of that debt, if that's something y'all are interested in doing.
Do you think that we couldn't do anything until February, is that right?
Correct, yeah. There used to be something called an advance refunding that could be done. And with the recent changes to the tax law 2 years ago, for whatever reason, the federal government decided to outlaw advance refunding. So you cannot do advance refundings anymore. So the timetable now specified is that it can be no earlier than 90 days before that callable date. So that's why fall is looking like, we can get to that 90 days to the February date. Why we're looking at it now. But yeah, 90 days before the call date is the earliest you can do it.
So the primary reason for doing this would be the callable feature.
It would be to refinance at a better interest rate and possibly get maybe $100,000 in savings over the remaining life of the loan on the total debt service.
We can do it before the federal government does something.
Changes something else.
We actually have 2 more of these very similar coming up as opportunities a few months down the road.
Does this
So
change
as long as rates continue to be where they are, then we'll continue to look at those as well.
Does this extend the?
This does not extend the maturity. There could be options out there like that. The ones that we're looking at, though, do not extend the maturity. It just changes the payment schedule some, and we get a lower rate basically. And there are costs involved, so we are looking at netting those costs out and making sure that even after the cost of the refinancing, that it still would be worth doing. So yeah, more to come on that. And then we have 2 more issuances that are callable next summer, but could be done towards the end of the spring and in that 90-day period if rates stay low. Yep. Yeah, it's worth looking at for sure. So, all right, that's all I have. Any questions?
Thank you.
Okay.
That's good, thank you. We have board appointments for the Main Street Advisory Board. Did you read that in?
Appointments to the Main Street Advisory Board.
And I move that we accept the 4 nominees or applicants for the Main Street Advisory Board positions.
Wait, I think there's 7.
Oh, 7. What did I say?
4.
4. I'm sorry, 7.
Okay, so your motion is
To accept the 7 applications.
who are, okay, and they're eligible. Yeah, okay, and they're presently on there and they're eligible to go back home, right?
They're not on there.
Be staggered.
Oh, they're not.
Yeah,
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
We need to
Okay.
name them.
I'll second
We need
it.
to name them.
Okay.
Just so it's clear.
I don't have the names before.
I do. You have it.
The following individuals to the Main Street Advisory Board: Edward Hamilton, Mary Elaine Jones, Jim Morris, Ann Overby, Linda Rector, Melissa Southern, and Mike Wellborn.
A second.
All right, good. Thank you. Okay, we've got a motion second. All in favor, let it be known by the raised hand. Okay, good. Do you have items for future agendas that would lengthen the meetings? If there are none, and there will not be an executive session tonight without a motion to do so, let me ask you this. No, okay, we're taking care of that. Okay, in that case, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Amen.